And the reason it's black right now is because I have it selected. If I come over to here or to something like this, we'll see that texture. But now I have it in there. I have this wood texture, but I'm really not crazy about the color, so I'm going to do a couple more cool things with this color real quick. So I'm going to get, instead of using this, we're going to use a different texture. And that texture takes a bunch of little tweaks to get it to work just right. But let's do it. This is as deep as we're going to go at this point. So I'm going to push the space bar again, and I'm going to pick that first option up here, which is gradient map. And I'm going to pull that gradient map. Actually, I wanted it not selected on there. Gradient map. And in here, I'm going to double click it, and you'll see I have this right here. Well, what it does, you'll see it has an output and an input. And the input is, if you look at it, it says the input is the image to be processed. And if you roll over just the gradient map, it'll tell you the map filter replaces the grayscale value of the input image by remapping it with a color gradient. So if you do an input color or a gradient or any kind of black and white image in here, it's going to use this gradient that we use in here to replace the black and whites inside of there. How do I mean? Well, let me show you first by doing the noise. I'm just going to do a simple grunge or a noise or something in here. I'm not going to make it super complicated. Let's just see what this looks like. Fractal, let's do this one, and we'll throw it up in here. So I've got this, noisy texture. And what I'm going to do is come over to here, and I'm going to say gradient, and I'm going to go over to the gradient editor. Before I do that, though, I want to know, well, gradient editor, let's do it this way. And I can pick whatever color I want, whatever way I want it, and I can pick some colors that make it orange or whatever, and make it look like the wood that I want, and say okay, and close it down, and then it doesn't look like anything's happening. But once I put this in here, you'll see now I'm getting that speckly kind of feel, and I can blur this out, and I can soften it up. I can disorder the thing. I can change the scale so we get a little bit more big on that, things like that. But really, that's not what I was going to do. So let me go back to the gradient editor, and what you can do with this button right here is this is pick gradient, and what it allows you to do is draw a line on something, and it'll pick a gradient from that line. So what does that mean? If I go back to here, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I found a wood bark texture, and I'm going to pick that pick gradient again, and I can go over to this thing and say I want to pick these colors for my gradient, and look at that. It picks those colors for your gradient. So now I've got a much truer version of this wood that I may or may not like. So I could just take this one out and go over here and drag it into here. And now I've got this wood, but not only is it darker in the crevices, but it's also got this breaking up of the bark texture. And if I don't like that, I come back in. I'm going to maximize this. I'll come back in here, go gradient editor, and I'll say pick gradient, and I'll pick something maybe a little redder and darker like this. And then we can see what we get again. This is much easier, by the way, if you have two monitors. So I'm going to do it like this. Something random. Let's see what we get. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. It's a little bit more kind of there. And then what I could do too is I could say the same thing for this one. I'm going to pick another gradient. So I can do this, by the way. But I'm not going to keep this one. I'm not real crazy about it. I'm going to look for a better one. I can modify this too, but I want to do this simple for y'all. I'm going to throw this in there. Yeah, that's not too bad. For the darker one, we're going to pick another gradient map. And I'm going to say, oops, and I selected it again. Pick another gradient map. Oops, spacebar, gradient map. And I'm going to pick, again, I'm going to minimize this. And I'm going to go into here, go gradient editor, and pick gradient. And this I'm going to pick just this dark stuff in here. And I get this much darker, but still some kind of randomness to it. And then if I pick this and throw it in there, I've got this going on. And what I can do now, let me pull this back out, is I can say, let's see, random seed to change it up. And then I could say, scaling it. I can blur it out a little bit more maybe or less. I can do that this way too. I can mess with a bunch of little other things too. So we could do other things inside of here, but then I'm going to take this and use it for my darker blend. And now I'm going to get something closer to that. So I'm still not crazy about all this light I got. Go back to the gradient editor, minimize it. Maybe find a different wood if I don't like this one. I'm just going to go from here into here like that. And I get much darker. But now my wood doesn't feel like it's not, it's just so simple and easy to use. Another thing we could do is we look at this right here and see how it's sharp and everything. That's probably because this map is so sharp and whatever. What we could try again, grab this one and then add a levels and throw this over here. Apparently I didn't grab it, but we can go throw it into here. This into there. This into there. And then we can come to this and see if we can do something a little bit. So we can see this, the final result, and look at this one. Maybe push the dark out a little bit and we can see what it's doing here. Maybe play with this like that. Maybe too much. Pull up the white a little bit so it's not as strong. Maybe I want to play with this, and maybe I don't want to play with this so it ruins everything. I want to keep the pattern, but I want to soften it up for the normal part of it. So I'm going to turn this one off. I didn't like where that went. I grab that and throw it in there. And what I'll do is I'll Control-C, Control-V this, so I have a copy of that gradient. If I double click on it, you see it's the same one. And what I'll do is I will take this one off of there, take a look at this one, drag it in there, and now I can mess just with this map, but keeping it the same, hopefully, and then control that. So if I control balance, maybe I can get, see how it's looking at my map this way? So maybe the dark is too much at this point. Maybe I want to turn down the contrast so it doesn't push so far. Very interesting. So it's a little bit better. It's a little bit closer to what I want. And there you go. I have one simple texture. It's made of wood. I made it out of wood. I used pretty much one. I can get rid of this one now, by the way. And then probably what you want to do is just clean this up as much as possible. You want the idea that somebody else comes in here and is able to understand what you did to get to this point. So a lot of times they do this, like that. And there you go. So we got one wood, and that's all I'm asking for. I want 3 different Substance Designer materials. You can play with the height map too, and we haven't talked about adding nodes, but we'll do that eventually.